How are you doing? Let me
I am. Oh,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I'm doing good. I'm doing
Okay.
good. I'm happy to be here. My voice is not great today, but I hope we'll manage.
We'll make it work. Otherwise, you can use sign language, and I'll try to interpret to the best of my knowledge. But yeah, for everyone, I have Andreas, CEO of Toddle here. Toddle is a no code, low code front end tool, and we have produced a little bit of content together in the past. Andreas is very knowledgeable about the whole space, and today he wants to talk a little bit about Toddle specifically for the hackathon, but also beyond. We want to talk a little bit about how you can use Toddle and FastGen together. But maybe let's start with the Toddle perspective. I'll ask you a couple of questions about Toddle. You answer the questions, and then we can dive a bit deeper and take a look into how the two tools work together. Does it make sense?
Perfect.
Okay. So maybe in your own words, what is Toddle?
So Toddle is a platform for sort of what we call a next generation platform for building web applications. And it's all built around the idea that you should be able to build applications that are every bit as capable as what people are building with code today, but as a no code platform. So we took a little bit of a different approach than quite a lot of other platforms, where we start from the most complex use cases, saying what are the needs of software teams that are delivering applications at either startup but all the way to enterprise scale, and how can we build a tool that meets their needs, but then also simplify everything that we can simplify to a point where someone can pick this up in days or weeks to really get started with it without spending like years learning to code, right? So it's very much built on the sort of more advanced end of the no code spectrum, and specifically for professional developers, I think are going to see a lot of benefit to Total.
Got it. And if you say professional developers, do you mean it has to be someone who can code, who's a professional like software developer, or can it be someone who is a designer who's well versed in front end as well?
Oh, I mean it in the broadest possible version of that word. I think someone who develops software, however they do it, I think we need to grab that word and hold on to it. I think there's difference between being a coder and being a developer, and developer definitely fits in with all kinds of, no matter how you create software. The point is you're creating, right?
Got it. Yeah, I just wanted to like make that extra
Yeah,
clear because sometimes people hear developer and think you need to be, I don't know, a full stack developer. But
for sure, for sure.
you can use it if you're a full stack developer, right? But you can also use it if you just want to create software and get really good at using Toddle. And then you talked a little bit about what's different in terms of that you start with more complex things. But what does it mean for the actual user? Like when, like for what type of project should they consider Toddle?
Well, I think there's a lot of no-code platforms on the market today. So I think for users coming in and making decisions early on, it can be a bit difficult to figure out what you're looking for. And let me start almost with saying the use cases where Toddle might not be the best choice. I think if you're looking to build something really quickly that you don't intend on spending a lot of time on, and as a result you're sort of happy it being 80% of what you envision it to be, right? So a lot of tools that'll let you build something almost in an afternoon that is actually really impressive. And Toddle, I mean, you can build something in an afternoon, just maybe not on the first day, right? There's a learning curve. But where these other tools may limit what you can achieve and how far you can take that application, Toddle is very much on the opposite side of that, saying there's really nothing you can't do. It's basically, if you can do it on the web, you can do it in Toddle, right? There's always a way of achieving what it is you want to do, with a very high focus on you being able to design an application that's your branding, that lives up to your design and your standards, and also have the smooth functionality that you want to add to it, right? So if you really care about all the details, if you really care about making this application the best possible user experience, that's exactly the kind of user we built Toddle for. If you're more like, I kind of just need to get it up or get it out, and in order to do it quickly, and it doesn't matter too much what it looks like, Toddle can absolutely do that, but then so can a ton of other tools, right?
Agreed. Maybe let's actually jump in. Can you give us like a quick just overview of Toddle itself? Like not focusing on the fast-gen part yet, but just show us what it looks like, which different areas does it have? Just give us the high-level overview.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just see, and I think I can share my screen. That should be okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So let me take let's see. We have a project here. I did a small stream not too long ago with Bravo Studio about this concept of picking your no-code stack. So what I'm doing here is I'm loading up a project and I'm going to create a new branch. And so Toddle has branches, which is kind of like versions, but the difference is that you can have multiple versions in parallel. So basically every developer or creator on your team can have their own branch and therefore work asynchronously at the same, like essentially at the same time, but on completely different version. In the end, you could then merge all this, push it live without changing anything or affecting someone else's work. So basically it allows you to do a lot of big teamwork without essentially conflicting with each other, right?
Got it. And how does it work if there's two conflicting changes? Like how do you merge it then?
So we first of all spend a lot of time making sure that really we can detect what is a conflicting change. But if you have that, you always get to see what are the things I've pushed, what are the things that other people have pushed, and you'll be able to then go and say, I can pick either mine or their changes. And you get to merge before you can publish your work. You have to merge any previously published work into the live branch. And as a result, if you're picking and choosing, and you sometimes have to pull in some work other people have done and then actually modify it a bit to make it work with yours, you get to do that on your branch. So you're never compromising the production version when doing that, right? But you sort of get the opportunity to go and say, well, which one of these versions is actually the right one, or do I need to like combine them in some way, right?
Got it.
And so the application here is a relatively somewhat simple one, and it basically about like I can just zoom out a bit. There we go. And it's about sort of picking your no-code stack. So when you're building an application, you want to be aware of what technologies am I introducing here, right? Do I need to build a web app? Do I need a backend? Do I need to pick a database? What do I need here? So let's say we're swiping right on Bravo Studio and Make. We don't need Sano for this one. Let's bring in Fastgen and Toddle, and maybe we'll also add some Superbase in this case, right? And of course, let's add some 3D with Spline, some OpenAI. You can sort of, and it's sort of, you go to pick these, right? And in the end, you can sort of say, oh, these are the ones you picked. These are the ones you chose not to go with. And then you can go and do a nice tweet about it. That's very much a promotional app. There's no real benefit to it. It's just sort of a fun way of saying, what is your technology choice, right? And this is all built entirely in Toddle. You can just reset all the variables. What you're looking at now is the Toddle editor. If you're familiar with a tool like, for example, Webflow, it should look somewhat familiar. I think we're ideologically quite aligned on a lot of things. On the left, we have our element tree, where we can see all the different elements on the page. On the right, we've got our inspector panel, or right panel as we often call it, where you can see different styling attributes. So here for the H1, I can go and see I've set the font size, I've set my text color and different properties. You can also set different attributes. So if you're familiar with HTML, this should all kind of make sense. If you're quite new to HTML, that's maybe why some of it doesn't yet. But basically, we're sticking very close to the browser's own technology and the language that the browser speak, because that gives you the best performance application. And also, they actually did a really good job of creating essentially a technology that lets you do quite incredible things, right? We also have events. You can go and say, in this case, I don't know why we have a click event. Well, it doesn't do anything. We'll get rid of it. so we can sort of listen for different events and sort of trigger different actions off of that. I think one of the things that sort of sets Toddle a little bit apart from some other tools is that we've really gone quite all in on the no-code part. So while you can absolutely extend functionality with code, you really almost never need to. So here's an example. This is a list item we have here, down here, and we are actually, that's up here. We'll pick another one. We'll just pick the article. This one's repeated. And so what we're seeing here is our formula editor. And so this lets you sort of build visual formulas that can be incredibly powerful. So what this is actually doing is right now it's saying, I'm fetching getting some data from an API where it's fetched some tool items. Then it goes around and filters all the ones that has already been either added to an approved or rejected list. And so any of the tools that are not in this list is no longer being displayed. And so as we are swiping right, we're adding a tool to our approved list, and then therefore we're no longer rendering it inside our list, right? And so from if you're a coder, that might not seem like the most complicated thing, but for a no-code tool, this is quite a complex formula, and Toddle can go quite a lot further than that. I think to sort of speak to one of the, I don't know how much more time we have on this part, if you want to.
No, like we have 1 or 2 more minutes.
Okay, perfect. So I think one of the things that sets Toddle a bit apart is that you really can build things that are incredibly complex. And I think the most complex we have is that Toddle itself is a Toddle application. So
I still can't wrap my head around that. That's it's so cool.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, fundamentally, it sort of spawned mostly out of us trying to optimize our own work, right? I kind of so when I say Toddle is built in Toddle, I mean here's our website. You can also look at our docs. You can see our documentation page right here. But also actually the whole component editor. So here we have the left panel that we're displaying out here. Inside our editor, we can dive into that and see this is where that's being created with all the different tree nodes, as we call them, for each element. So every part of the Toddle editor is itself a component built in Toddle, and actually the whole editor is just one big Toddle app. And I think that it sort of spawned out of well, first of all, way back, I needed sort of a showcase for Toddle, where it's like, okay, I think this is now at a stage where I can build really complicated things with it, but I don't really have time to both build something really complicated and also keep working on Toddle. And over time, that was clearly going to be a problem. So the obvious choice really was saying, well, how about just building all of Toddle in itself, right? It turns out to be a great thing. We are right now a team of 5 people, and we are shipping features faster than I've ever done in a software team. I mean, the fact that our designer can actually go in and work directly in this tool, doesn't need to know anything about programming, doesn't really initially need to know anything about all these data structures we're seeing over here, and can just actually pick up elements and saying, you know what, this element right here, this needs to look different, right? Let me go and edit like the different parts here, right? And go and actually adjust that styling without the need to understand a big code base has just been such an incredible boost to our productivity, right?
I bet, yeah. Like you don't have to translate it from Figma into the actual production app. You can just, at least for smaller things, just do it themselves and like go into Toddle directly. That makes sense. So I now know how to like build the front end in Toddle. I can build some logic on top of it to sometimes render parts of it and then remove them depending on what's happening in the app. How would I add FastGen to this? Let's say I need to store something in a database, or we need to like use some additional logic that should happen on the server side. Where would I find that?
Well, so the easiest thing would probably just to go and create a new project, and then we have a little FastGen template here.
Okay,
so if you choose that one, FastGen demo, pick an emoji. That's always important. It's going to be a piggy. So by choosing this template, we already build out some basic logic or basic functionality you might need for your FastGen application. So in this case, it's a very, very simple page that just says hello.
Yep.
But the hello, the email here, which is my email, is actually coming from a API called session here, right? And that's fetching from my project, my FastGen app. I'm fetching my users and then data. And this is because I'm already, in this case, I'm already previously through a session logged into FastGen. And so this template comes with a home page. It comes with a login page. Again, with a sign-up API where you can sign into that. It comes with a sign-up page as well for creating a new sign-up.
Got it. So basically what I would do is like I could use a template, but if I'm in the front end and I need to fetch information out of FastGen, what I would do is I would click on the element and then I would click on plus API.
Well, so initially when you're here, APIs kind of live separately from elements. They live inside either components or pages. Components or pages are kind of very similar. The difference is page has a URL sort of associated with it, right?
Yep.
So in this case, I would go and create here a new API. And then in FastGen, it's actually quite simple. I don't think I have one set up. Maybe we should just go and let's go and create a new project.
Okay.
Toddle, FastGen. Oh, let's just say FastGen Hackathon. That might be taken.
It might be taken, yes.
Toddle FastGen demo, right? We'll just add Toddle. And we'll go and create a very basic root, your classic hello world. Am I having a mouse issue? Users limit. That's a problem. Okay. Probably should have upgraded that. I'll get on that, Mike. Right. So we create a new root. We'll say it's a public one for now. And then we can just do like a success response here with hello from, this should be JSON message, right? Hello from FastGen. Right. I think we need
yeah, you need to name it real quick. And then you should probably also change authentication to public in case we haven't done that. And you also need to name that. You can just name that success or whatever you want to name it.
There we are. And I think I did
at the very top.
This to
okay,
public,
great. Yeah, I missed that. Yeah. Okay.
So if we deploy this one, and now we can go and copy that URL from here. And in Toddle, we can just say we'll call it hello.
Okay, we press on API, which is either the component or on the page level. Then we name it. It doesn't have to be the same name, right? It's just like the name is inside of Toddle. And then we just add the actual URL path that you can copy out of the endpoint that you built within FastGen. You put it in.
Yeah. And what Toddle does, as I say, the name here is just for reference inside Toddle. It has nothing to do with actually making the request, right? But because we have this standard feature called auto fetch in Toddle, which basically means that Toddle will try and figure out when it needs to fetch this data automatically. So by default, it's going to say, I'm going to change it whenever I load the page or component, right? That's going to be the default. And you can see it immediately got it here and said the message is here. So we can, let's just go in and we'll change this heading 1 to say our hello data message, right? And so what I'm using
what did
here
you do just now, just so that everyone can follow along?
So I used the same formula, just like I did with the repeat, or showed in the code in the other example, right? Every time you see this little FX button, it means you can define something using a formula, right? And that means formulas are what we use for using dynamic data, which basically means it's going to change based on an API variable or anything that sort of changes over time. Yeah.
Got it.
And so here I go and I can pick my API hello.
Yes.
And then I can, in from that, I've got these 3 options of like, was it a success? Then there'll be some data. If it failed, there'll be an error. And if it's still loading, then this will be true. Right now it's not loading. So I'm going to use the data, and then we had that message property we set in FastSend.
Yep.
So I'm just going to get that out. Right.
Great. I just want to make sure that everyone can follow along and knows what to do.
But so maybe we could actually, it might be a good thing to go and say, well, let's try and make this just a little bit more dynamic, right? So in here, I think we can try and say, what if instead of just saying hello, from FastGen, let's try and add in a variable here. We can try and add in I think if we set a query param with a name, we can sort of send that from toddle and we'll say hello to that. It's not the most.
You can use a query. You can also send it as a body, whatever you want.
Yeah, but so here we've got query and we'll just do name, right? So now it should basically say, if we add a query param, it should say hello and that name. That's kind of the idea. And so in toddle, we can go and use that in our API here. We can just go here to queries, add one, give it name, and we'll just say, well, Mike, in this case, right? And it'll return hello, Mike.
Nice. Okay.
So where toddle gets a little bit more interesting is, let's say, got a stale variable here. Let's say we add the name here. We'll start with Mike. Right? So what I'm doing now is I'm creating a new variable in toddle, which is a way for toddle to store information only when the application is loading. So it's not a database. It's just when you got the app running, you can store some temporary data.
Yes.
And in this case, it's Mike. And now inside my hello endpoint, instead of just typing in the value Mike here, you can see everything's grayed out with a formula, right? And in this case, like no matter how many times you make this request, it's always got the name is always going to be Mike. But we can choose instead to use a variable here, and we've got our name variable. And so initially, we're not going to see any change here, right? Because it just says Mike. But let's go and add an input field. So I'm just E for adding a new element, and then I'm going to pick an input here, right? We'll just move that up here, and we'll give it some gap because much nicer. Now this input field, I can start binding this to my variable. So I can go and say, I want the value here to be my name. And immediately the value here is going to change. And then I can say, but whenever I change this, I want to update that variable. So I'm going to say input, then pick a change event. I'm going to say the action I want to do here is set name. So if you're looking at this, this is a workflow. If you're familiar with FastGen, you basically already knows how it works. Rather than this being an endpoint, this is when an event happens inside toddle app. But the basic premise of this is the same as a workflow in FastGen, right? So here we can now say the action I want to do is update my variable. And then I can say it's called target value. And again, this is toddle being very close to the web standard because that's how you actually extract that value from an input in the browser, right? And so what this does is that whenever I change this, the input changes right away, but you'll notice that also the message down here changes. So what toddle actually does is says, well, this variable changed, but because that variable changed, I know that I'm using it inside this, and this was set to autofetch. So that means that my input data to this request has now gone stale. It's no longer valid, and I need to go and refetch that data. So this is sort of a very nice way. You can very easily build fairly sophisticated things that normally require a lot more steps, because Toddle basically understands that, when this data changes, I don't need to tell Toddle everywhere that it needs to go to make a change all the time. I just need to say that this data is used there, and then when I change that variable, it automatically goes and refetches the data, and when the data changes, it automatically goes and updates the text here in the H1.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense to me. So basically, to summarize, we can just add APIs. You can build the APIs in FastGen. You enter the URL path into the API section. You can name it any way you want. You can also send query parameters or even headers to the API if you want to give it additional information. That is very helpful in case you have some kind of input or any kind of data you want to send to FastGen. Within FastGen, you can then manipulate it. You can store it in the database. You can even fetch data from the database and display it in Toddle. And all of it can be achieved very easily just by adding the APIs to Toddle, especially since Toddle is very smart at discovering whether the information has changed or not. Was it a good summary?
I think that's a perfect summary. I think FastGen and Toddle is kind of a perfect match. We've built quite a few things together already. And I think both you've built a lot of demos and we've built a lot of things as well. And it kind of, there's a very similar sort of mentality you feel when you're like, it's a similar feel when you use the applications. You understand how building workflows in FastGen, and all of a sudden you can't understand workflows in Toddle as well. When you're setting up an API in FastGen, you kind of immediately understand how to set up the other side of that, like the client side of that API in Toddle, right? And I think also the fact that FastGen has a built-in like Postgre database and authentication means that we can actually go and do like for example, we can build a whole login page here with all the different functionality in it. And when you're cloning this, all you need to do is go and change your base URL here, right?
Yes.
Which right now points to different. So whenever you're cloning this template, which really is the easiest way to get started, I would say even if you're not looking, like if you don't want to start with login, you don't have to, but there's a good chance that you want to add that to your application throughout the week. Right. I think just go and clone this and start from here, because it really is the easiest way to get going. And when you're ready to add authentication, all those things, you already got the login page. You can just start saying, I don't like the styling. I want it to be more red. Right. Whatever it is you want, you've got the full freedom to. Yeah, I am the design part of the team.
Yeah, I am also very much the design part on our end, which is why I highly approve of that change.
One of the actually really impressive benefits we've seen from using Toddle internally is that Casper, my co-founder, who is the actual designer, has become quite a good developer. I mean, in a no-code world, I don't think he can code at all, as far as I know. But he is very good at using Toddle. He can build really sophisticated things. Unfortunately, not so much the other way around. My design hasn't gotten any better.
I have a similar problem. My design is still on the same level as before, but luckily both my co-founders are pretty good designers, so I can benefit from that. But yeah, I think as you mentioned, it's a good match. Also, both CEOs have neon signs in their background, so that's perfect compatibility right there.
Yeah.
I think we can just wrap it up. If anyone wants to see more, we recently recorded a video together where we built basically like a little more expansive app than this one with Toddle and FastGen together. You should find it on Toddle's YouTube channel. And yeah, the whole idea is basically if you're looking for a front end for the hackathon or even for other projects, take a look at Toddle. It's very compatible with FastGen. We are also working on going a bit deeper on some of the integrations and templates that we're building together. And I think that's it. Do you have any other words for the people that are watching either now or who will watch the video later?
Yeah, I've got two things. First of all, make sure to check out our Discord channel if you want to try out Toddle. It's kind of the perfect place to get started and get help. We are there all the time, and we also have a ton of users in our community that are just ready to help with a second's notice. So it's a really, really good place to get started and learn how to use Toddle. And second all, I would just say have a great hackathon, and I'm looking forward to seeing all the cool things that are going to get built.
Well, thank you. We are excited as well. Thanks for your time. We highly appreciate it. And have a good rest of your week. Happy building.
Yeah, likewise. Bye.